Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family, and yes, the crack in the windshield is still there, but hopefully within another 3,000 miles we'll get it fixed.
Yes, indeed, we do hope so.
And so, lots of great questions out there, and then, there are other questions that come in that tell me that somebody's probably just checked into the channel for the first time, and it's all Greek to them when we're talking about extraterrestrials, interdimensionals, different types of consciousness, all these different layers to our reality. And if you've never been exposed to that, for sure, it could be extremely confusing, I should say. Like, what the heck are you talking about?
Well, yeah, because we've been raised to have one belief system and one belief system only, and they pound it into our ego that if we don't believe one certain thing, then we're going to burn in hell for all of our lives, and beyond, eternal damnation. So they really scare it into us that we better believe one single thing, and that way they can keep us in control. So usually these folks that do leave the comments, they are just simply afraid.
Well, it's conditioned. They've only heard one story. They haven't, delved deep into other opinions on what reality is, or actually done, the months, years, decades of meditation and energy work that it takes to really experience alternate realities. There are other ways, as we've talked about, people taking trips to Peru, for instance, for that substance that starts with an A that can take you on a shortcut to seeing exactly the matrix in which we live and exploring alternate realities. But everything can be accessed through meditation.
It absolutely can. But, it does make one wonder, why in the heck do they make plant medicine so impossible to get your hands on, to really use it? And if you can get your hands on it, and they have legalized some of this stuff in your state, they make sure they have control over it, how it's grown, how it's dispensed, how much is dispensed, why it's dispensed, and things of this nature, but all of these things, like Mike said, can be reached probably in a more pure way, in a more pure fashion, through meditation and mantras.
Yeah, nothing is needed but dedication. That's it. And just clearing your consciousness by doing things like, getting off of toxic substances, getting off of simple sugars, high fructose corn syrup, artificial dyes, stop drinking the pop, the soda, stop taking in all these different toxins, getting yourself shielded and insulated from all the Wi-Fi, the 5-FIVEG, etc. Most definitely getting off of big PHARMA, because it's so curious how there are certain substances that are not allowed that actually would alter your consciousness in a positive way, so to speak, but other stuff that can be extremely addictive and actually destroy lives is perfectly fine. But that's part of this paradigm that we find ourselves in, and we're not really going to go into that too much more. We want to really talk about consciousness itself. Okay, so somebody made the comment about like the extraterrestrial pirates and saying, well, how does our Lord and Savior fit in with all this, and God fit in with all this? Well, if you get outside of that box and you start exploring every other tradition that's out there, you recognize it's not even really a pantheistic point of view. Source, and the word God has been so just obfuscated. It's been totally misused in so many different ways, because we have God, we have gods, we have all these different beings. There is one source from which everything emanates, and I think the law of one does a good manner of describing it as just simply infinite intelligence. There's one source of consciousness from which everything springs.
Right, that's really important to keep in mind. So when they do talk about God walking through the garden, how does God walk? How does the source of everything make noise? you have to really ask yourself these things, and ask yourself and be fair about it too. How does the source of everything walk through a garden? So really ponder that, and then start asking yourself, have you been told the truth? Are all of these things true? Are you believing it because you're afraid, or because you really truly believe it? And then ponder that. Sometimes people have to ponder this for months, because they're so afraid of eternal damnation, because they play on the ego from, probably putting children in Sunday school to create this one single belief system at the age of 2 and 3.
Exactly, and we've covered this on so many different videos too. And we talked about how the secret societies control the narrative. They have controlled this for a very long time. We talked about a 33rd degree level Mason named Albert Pike, who back in 1871 said, you know what, there's going to be 3 world wars. 3 world wars. And his letter to another Mason, Mazzini was the name. And there are those that say, well, that's a forgery, or it wasn't written until like 1900. Even if it wasn't written until 1900, or how did they still know before even World War I started? And they even talked about bringing Israel back. And when we look at the Balfour Declaration, who brought Israel back into existence? It was a certain family line whose name means Red Shields. Rothschilds, which is part of the main banking cabal that has controlled our narrative here. So, it wasn't really the source of everything bringing that into existence in order to manifest nonstop wars upon the earth and create a certain narrative. It was the control that's here on the planet, these secret societies that knowingly serve intelligences that are not the creator of the universe, but rather just extraterrestrial, interdimensional beings.
Right, absolutely. So there's just so many different ways we can look at this, so many different things that we can experience, but you do need to get your mind free in order to look at these other belief systems and have these other experiences. They're very, very good at tying us down, or tying our brains down, so to speak, so that we can't explore other belief systems, because it's all about ascension. Ultimately, it's all about getting to understand yourself, raising your vibration, and once we find that out, we can be up and out of this 3D reality anytime we want. There's more options out there. Life doesn't have to be a constant rat race, a constant struggle, just barely getting ahead all the time. Life doesn't have to be that way.
Most definitely. And there are those that think that the King James Bible is infallible, and when you realize King James was the head of all the Masonic lodges in England, he was an insider. He is part of this control group. He's part of the bloodlines of that group that starts with an I, has a couple L's, ends in an I. Which again, these are all the ones that are carrying out the will of these extraterrestrial, interdimensional beings, which some may call fallen angels, but angel just means in Greek. The original Greek word meaning is messenger. Messenger of what? Of the gods, of these beings that, when you look to the Anunnaki stories, came from the heavens to the earth. There is so much more to all this. The fall of man is a dimensional fall. It's going from being a 5D, a 5th density being, down to what we have been, which is in this Kali Yuga, the Kali Yuga that we're out of now, but still feeling the effects of. It takes us down to being in a 3rd density body, and our consciousness, when it's not in the body, when we're either sleeping or when this body is no longer usable, then we're in that 4th density. But we can't go up higher than that. And the key is the building of the Merkaba, the building of the light body. And that all starts with opening up chakras and activating Kundalini, which, of course, being serpent energy, Shakti energy, if you're of a traditionalist, fundamentalist point of view, you've been taught to be terrified of that. That must be all of demons. And that's because the ones that truly are demonic are telling you that and giving you a limiting belief system. For Source, the true prime creator is in everything that it creates. So it's in you and it's in me, and you don't need to go to any priest, you don't need to go to any church to find it. You just simply go within. It's just that simple. There is no right dogma. Dogma is completely human-made.
Right. So, how do you find yourself, basically, is what you need to ask yourself. Who are you? What are you about? What do you like? What do you dislike? You are Source. You are that expression of Source. And it's right there within you. So, really important to take your time with these questions. They're very, very important questions because it deals with our ascension. It deals with our livelihoods. It deals with... It's very delicate, so you do want to take your time when you decide to step out and look at different belief systems, because there's so many out there. What if you're stuck in a certain belief system and you could be healed through energy work, but you're too afraid of it because your belief system says that it's evil or it's bad? Well, there's so much you could do for yourself if you could just be open-minded and allow things to be as they are and be as natural as they can possibly be.
Yes, and as we talked about, before so many times in so many different videos, if you think that what we have in the Bible that we're given, that it's infallible, then why are there thousands of edits in everything that we have, really, in the Gospel according to John, the oldest one we have, which is probably from anywhere between 200 and 300 years after Yeshua walked the earth, and it could be even older than that. There's thousands of edits in that book, so obviously it's not perfect. It's been edited, it's been redacted, it's been changed, just like the FBI and CIA do when they release things to the public. And it goes back deeper. The founder of the modern Christianity that we have, it really comes from Constantine the Great and the bishops that he appointed. He was a pagan Roman emperor that was trying to keep his empire together. So if you can't beat them, join them, but create a version that you can use to control them. And that's exactly what they did. They debated at the Council of Nicaea and the following councils things such as, who really was Yeshua? And, what was he? Was he divine? Was he not divine? Was he just an amazing rabbi, a teacher, like a yogi? Or was he, God in the flesh? And was this God in the flesh somehow separate from God, the big God, with a big G? They debated all these things. They did not agree on all these things. The dogma we have today comes after many centuries of that being solidified through the power of the powers that be. And, if you went against their teachings, you would be killed, excommunicated or killed. I mean, literally put to death. Many people were burned alive. Even as late as the 1500s, people were being burned alive for heresies because they went against the church. Not going against the true teachings of the true God, but going against the power structure that controls the planet. So we have to recognize that. Obviously, Source, the true infinite intelligence, it has to be in all of its creations, otherwise it wouldn't be omnipresent. It wouldn't be everywhere. It wouldn't be all-knowing. It wouldn't be all-powerful. It has to be in all of it. Its creations, including the trees and the birds and the animals and the fish, and even in the rocks and minerals.
At one point we were all very much connected to the planet, kind of like a system of internet where we could talk with the planet, talk with the trees, talk with the birds, all the other animals. There was like this connection that simply was. It just was. And all of that's been changed and manipulated to benefit a certain being, certain entities, I should say, so that we can do their bidding, do their work for them. So they just sit back and relax or do what they do and take advantage of our energy. So that's been hijacked from us, and please just recognize that you've been taught from such a young age to have one single belief system, and these people that Mike are talking about, they're the ones who put this belief system together for you.
Exactly. So recognize too that all the Sumerian writings predate anything biblical by thousands of years. And there's actually hundreds of thousands that are all telling the same story. So, this is pretty clear. When we talk about Adam and Eve, you're really you're referencing stories that are much older in much greater detail. And when we talk about them being placed in the garden, did you ever wonder why they were placed in the garden? Well, in the Sumerian story, they were created, so to speak, to basically work the land. Eden, E-D-I-N, instead of E-D-E-N. So these Sumerian stories way predated, again, thousands and thousands of years, and there are hundreds of thousands of tablets that we have found. And so there's still tons to be translated as well. So what is original sin? Because original sin has so many minds in this world, unfortunately, confused. Because you're told it's because they disobeyed God. Well, if Adam and Eve really didn't even exist when you get down to it, that whole story is just allegory when you get down to it. The original sin, when we look at the Sumerian stories, is basically anything that would disobey the gods. And the gods were not God with the big G. I mean, these were extraterrestrial and interdimensional beings. Extraterrestrial because they don't originally come from Earth, and also interdimensional because many of these beings have the ability to shift their vibrational frequency so they could be on 3D, 4D, or sometimes even 5D.
Right, and I know for a lot of you this is a lot to take on, especially if you're new to the channel. But go back to the Sumerian tablets. Take a look at how old those stories are and compare it to your current belief system and just see what you come up with. This is an individual journey. Everyone has to walk and do it their own way. You have to discover the truth for yourself on your own. No one can actually place your belief system in front of you. That's not how it was meant to be. Everybody has a unique path, unique gifts, unique abilities, and it should be expressed just like that.
Most definitely. So if we don't really have original sin, so to speak, against the creator of everything, but in the Sumerian stories, it's just simply that humans were procreating too fast, becoming too numerous, figuring things out too much on their own, to where they built a tower to the heavens, right? The Tower of Babylon. What does that really mean? Does that just simply signify a society that has gotten certain technologies and understanding that makes it so that they are like the quote-unquote gods, the extraterrestrial interdimensionals themselves, and perhaps there is the danger that they can no longer be controlled? Well, in the Sumerian stories, then we end up with Enlil just saying, wipe them all out. There's going to be a big flood, there's going to be a big impact, and we're just going to let them be wiped out. And then Enki, Enlil's half-brother, tells the Sumerian version of Noah, and again, the Sumerian stories are thousands of years older, to basically build an ark. Get yourself ready, save stuff, save yourselves. And so when Enlil finds out that everything wasn't wiped out so they could just start again with new genetic experiments, he's really ticked off. So, this is basically the original sin, quote unquote, is disobeying the slave masters, not the creator of this whole universe. Ask yourself too, would the creator of the whole universe, everything, maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't, but would he find blood sacrifices appealing? The smell of flesh being burned? Is that something that would appeal to something of the highest density? Obviously these are stories that have been used to control us. And, it's not about blood sacrifice. It's not about the creator of everything demanding the blood sacrifice of his only son. That's a very, very reptilian, draconian mindset.
Right. So, these are just things that are so important to think about, because belief systems can really help you or they can hinder you. They can hold you back or they can propel you forward. But your belief systems, that's what molds you, that's what guides you. So the more open you are to different belief systems, the better off you're going to be. The more options and more perspectives you're going to be able to take in. And that's something that the controllers, they don't want. They don't want us to know there's alternatives.
As we've said many times, if ultimately God is love, and the opposite of love is actually fear, then why should you fear God? Why would the fear of God be the beginning of wisdom? Now, perhaps, the fear of a slave master would be the beginning of wisdom, because you won't get beaten or destroyed in a flood or in a fire or in a plague. Think about the skies that we see so crisscross with patterns. These patterns that are being put there by machines, right? And then we look to the Bible and we see, God sent a plague that came from the clouds and wiped out 50,000 people because he was mad. It's not the creator of the universe, guys. This is, we were talking about those beings, really, that were, might refer to them, as we said before, Nibiruans, because it's not even all of those that came from the heavens, which is what Anunnaki means. And there are some that come from the heavens in a completely physical way in ships, and there are others that come from the heavens in an interdimensional way in a Merkaba, which is the light body. Well, it's the vehicle that allows you to go from, say, even like 6th density, 7th density, all the way down to 3rd density, just by choosing to do so with intent. Mm-hmm. And I know for most of you guys, you're all like, well, we've heard all this, we know. But there's, still new people coming in that are, not aware of all these things. So every now and then it's a good idea to recap some of this. So do we believe in God? Well, if you're talking, do we believe that there is a source of everything, which is basically based on love, that is experiencing its creation in a myriad of different ways through countless individuals of all different sorts, all across this multiverse, and so many different densities, so many different planets? Yeah, we do, of course. That goes without saying. This is not just a random accident. This is completely a playground / learning place for consciousness.
Yeah, so hopefully, we're not trying to hurt anyone's feelings or bash on anyone's belief systems. We're trying to help people expand their horizons, because in reality, more people have been hurt because of certain belief systems that are clamped down, not because people are opened up. People tend to do things with their very best thinking, or they do them because, they think their heart's in the right spot, when really it's their belief system. They think they're defending something or doing the right thing, and in reality, they're hurting people. So that's why it's important to wake up other people, because we don't want to hurt each other. We don't want to be against each other.
No, and again, most people don't recognize that they're actually in the system. They're actually part of the system. They think they're outside the system, and in reality, they're in the system. And they have the best
There's a speed trap ahead.
They have the best intentions. When they're going to church or going to a temple or going to a mosque, a synagogue, it's because they want to do good, because they want to share love, they want to have fellowship with others. It's just that they don't recognize that at the core of the teachings, it's about controlling the consciousness and bringing it into a limited point of view. If we view ourselves as being deserving of non-stop torture by being burned alive forever, well, that's kind of a negative mindset. That is something that's going to constrict and restrict. Love is expansive, fear is contractive. And we have to just start to recognize these things. When you start going in depth, you start to recognize that things that we were taught, they don't really make sense. And then, the teachers, when you get to a certain point, They'll say it's just a mystery. It's just one of those things. Or, oh, you have to have the Holy Spirit to understand into you. When, the Holy Spirit itself, as we've talked about, is, the Shekinah, which can relate to the Shakti, which can relate to the goddess energy that we see all around us, that it's been ostracized from fundamentalist thinking.
Right, so hopefully we've shed some light on a few things for some of you who are newer, and for those of you who have been with us for a while, hopefully we've given you some things to ponder. I think it's a good conversation.
Yeah, it's a basic one. And then we've also talked about Yeshua, because Yeshua is real. He really did exist. And some of you might not even recognize that name, but that's the actual name of the one that we would call Jesus, which is the Latinized translation from the Greek Jesus. So, in effect, Jesus never recognized the name Jesus. He was Yeshua, so that name itself is in some ways a misdirection, even though there is power in the name because billions of people believe in the name. Yet it's a misdirection in that the person that actually walked the earth, he never went by the name Jesus. And so for many people, they don't even understand that. And that's such a basic place to start.
Right. So that is really important to understand too, because everybody needs something to start with.
And so then you would say, if he really did walk the earth, but it wasn't about him coming here to be executed because his blood wasn't going to make the world purified again and acceptable to God, then why did he come here? Well, he was a rabbi, as they have referenced him in the Bible. You could think of him as a yogi. He was an Essene, as we had talked about. There were the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and there were the Essenes as well. And the Essenes recognized that the system was evil, that the world was under the control of a certain power structure, so they wanted to get out of it. And for the most part, they lived outside of the cities. They lived in their own communities. They, for the most part,
There's a speed trap.
didn't have really their own possessions, so to speak. They shared everything equally and supported each other in these small communities. They were very, very pious individuals. And they believed that the system itself was very, very dark and evil. So again, they wanted to be outside of it. And the Essenes, hundreds of years before Yeshua came, they had their own prophecies of the coming of a teacher of light that would bring to them, again, light is knowledge. It's gnosis with a G, which means an experiential knowledge. Again, you got to go within. It's not about saying any words. It's not about picking the right church, whether it's like you got to be Baptist, or you got to be Methodist, or you got to be Lutheran, or you got to be Episcopalian, or you got to be Catholic, or there's 30,000 different denominations. Which one's right? It's not a question of that. It's again about, is there real change in us that allows us to have our vibrations go up? So the Essene were waiting for this teacher of light to come that was going to give them a new path, an easier path for them to understand in their own traditions as well, and a new way to basically ascend, because ascension is the way out of this matrix. It's all about your vibration. So if you constantly are thinking, I'm a worthless creature born into original sin, you're not going to ascend. If you truly believe that, that thought itself is pulling you down and keeping you chained into this reality.
Right. So we just really want to help people kind of extract themselves from that belief system so that they can be free.
Yes, so thank you for your patience, for all of you who this is nothing but just a recap and you are very, very familiar with all this. And again, this is going out to those that have been brought up in one system, that only knew one way and have never thought to question why.
That's right, I agree.
So thanks for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. We will do others going in deeper into some of this thought while we have the chance. on the road here. And as always, if you guys need to reach us, it's EEARTS at ProtonMail or evolutionaryenergyarts@gmail.com. God bless, guys. Stay safe. Namaste.
Namaste.